Hey, welcome to the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. With us today, a great guest, Judson Robinson from the Urban League. And Judson, I'm going to ask you right off the bat. You're writing the Judson Robinson book on leadership. What are some of the chapters?
Well, let's see. You got to have vision, right? You have to have, I think, the ability to stick through it.
Yeah.
I think you have to be able to communicate that. I think you have to listen to your people. I think good leaders are people who realize they don't have all the answers, that they need to understand that they too can learn from other people. I think you have to surround yourself with talented folks. I certainly don't have all the answers. I can't do all the things that it takes to make it happen. So making sure that I've got capable people around me is very important. You know, and understanding, you know, when you have people that have situations in life and, you know, yeah, you could be, I think, tough and say, well, you know, if you can't do the job today, then, you know, there's no empathy and you have to move on because we have a greater goal to achieve. I think that people need to build a somewhat of a track record of disappointment or bad luck, whatever you want to call it. You know, a lot of our folks, they have to show up at their jobs every day. It's almost a requirement. If you don't show up, you don't get paid. And that means you don't, you know, pay your bills. So we have to take all that, I think, into consideration, allow people to grow into the persons that they have the capacity to grow into, the potential. So I think being a leader is a lot of constant, you know, discussion amongst yourself about how to make decisions that are really good decisions for the long run.
How do you, at the Urban League, how do you make a decision? I mean, do you have a senior staff, a core team? Talk a little bit specifically how that works for you.
Yeah, I'm a give and take type of guy.
Yeah.
I might have my mind made up about what I want to do, but I think how you communicate that to people is depending on your personality and your ability to just be who you are. You have to learn about yourself, about how you influence others to make sure they understand it's not just my idea, but it's your idea too.
Yeah.
Right? And so it could be to a degree tweaked, which is fine, because your idea, again, isn't always the perfect idea.
Right.
And people tend to want to support things that they're a part of.
Yeah.
So if it's not just something that's being driven down your subordinate's throat, but instead it's an opportunity for them to lend to the potential of a good idea, I think more people are likely to get on board.
It's interesting, like the day that you were able to give up that the idea was yours and give other people credit, your ideas, a lot more of your ideas get used. I notice, I give people credit, and I'm always amazed sometimes when they blatantly know it was my idea and I give them credit, they still take it, you know. It's
exactly.
But you get your stuff done, right?
Yeah,
it's sort of an interesting thing.
It's a learned experience, truly.
Talk a little, the first thing you said was vision. You came into an organization that had a long history. How did you put into place sort of your shared vision, right? Because obviously you checked with people, but you came up with a vision. How did that work for you?
Right. Well, I think really looking at the organization before you actually step into the shoes.
How long have you been at Urban League now?
10 years now.
Wow.
10 years now. So really understanding what the Urban League was at the time when I met it, its history and what it's done and where it's really excelled, and then looking at ways in which we could make that story even greater was how I kind of formulated the vision, because they did at the time a lot of great things separately, in silos, if you will. The housing department did great things in housing, the education department did great things in education, but there was no tying of the departments together so that the person who came in for housing counseling was aware of the fact that we had a program that his or her younger child may be able to join and therefore do better in school and therefore have less, you know, stress in the household and therefore one day make money and do well and a whole bit. So, you know, how do we take a person who comes into one door with the expectation of receiving services from that one door and be just made aware that they can also receive these additional services so that we have more of a complete wraparound experience. And it's a much better story to tell at the end of the day.
Talk about your background. Are you from Houston, Judson?
Yep, born and raised.
You have like a rich family history here, don't you?
Yeah, we've been around a while. So my father and my grandfather are both very involved in business here in the city. My dad also was involved in politics. He, there was a time when African Americans did not serve on school boards and city councils and all those types of things. And so he was the person that broke the barrier. He was the first African American to serve on city council. But back in those days, just because people didn't have the opportunities that they do today, that we take for granted, there were a lot of firsts. There was a lot of firsts that my grandfather did, and on my mother's side, and my dad's. They all had things that others had not done before. The first to go to college, or the first to own
Did your grandfather go to college?
Yeah.
Where did he go to
Went
college?
to Prairie View A&M.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And my son graduated from Prairie View A&M 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So that legacy kind of continues. My grandfather was a founding member of the Urban League, which he had done so many first and started so many things that when I actually applied for the job, I found out doing the research.
You didn't even know it then.
Didn't even know it. It probably was something, that was told to me when I was younger. Or, I probably saw one of the mementos or a trophy or something, for a job well done. And, that was one of the things that was interesting about my life, was that accomplishment was the norm.
Yeah.
So it was expected that you would serve
Did that
your
put
community.
pressure on you, or was it just sort of part of the deal?
Pressure.
Yeah.
No, it was a good thing. So many people.
It's pressure, but a good pressure.
Yeah, so many people don't have a role model in their own house to look up to. Some people don't get a chance to watch how a true leader leads, how a true husbands, how a true lover of his children loves. So I got all that, and that was back in the '60s. That was somewhat typical. But over the decades, that has diminished.
Yeah.
And so, my role is to try to establish, the foundation of what that looks like in a lot of the families that we meet who don't have a father in the household, who don't have a mom who understands how to discipline and how to show a kid how to learn.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that we can do that help to hopefully provide people with the same opportunities that many of us were raised in. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Take us through the early part of your career. Where did you go to college, undergrad?
Fisk University.
Fisk, wow.
Right.
And then first job, and follow it through a little bit.
So I started working, I was probably 11 or 12 years old, so I had a pretty good work ethic, just in terms of summers aren't for just chilling out. You're supposed to be learning how to be on time somewhere and do a good job. So lots of little jobs prior to actually going to college and then coming out and having a real job. But first job out was at IBM.
Really?
And they told me about everything excluding the dress code. So the first day of the interview, I show up with the big collared shirt and the fly
you were looking
shoes, good. And I was great for any college campus in America. But in terms of showing up for that job, and the nice thing is, a guy who was there, African American gentleman, actually pulled me to the side and said, "What time was your interview?" I said, 3 o'clock. He said, "Okay, well, you've got an hour and a half to go home, get changed, drop by Brooks Brothers and buy the wingtip shoes, and come back and look like me." And that's what I.
That was a gift.
It was a gift.
Wow.
And it just goes to show the importance of people helping people.
Yeah.
And so the rest is history. I got the job at IBM. The division I was in was sold to a company called 9X, which is New York, New England Telephone.
Yeah.
So it was a telephone company in the north. And back in the day when people bought computers, they were bought out of stores. You would go to a IBM Computer Center or what was the other ones called? Computer City, places like that. Yeah. And you had people like me that could show you how to use software. So how do I use a word processing software or spreadsheets or accounting and all that. And that was my job for 5 or 6 years.
And where was this? Where were you?
Down the street, Travis and Pope.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
right.
It was a retail environment. Yeah. Initially, I had a territory when I started with IBM, but when they created, the PC division, I was the first guy that was out there with the monochrome screen, which means green. You had a 10 megabyte hard drive. They sold for $6,000 if you wanted color.
Wow.
Right. And
that was a lot of money back then.
That was a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a small car.
And what was your next job then?
So after I left IBM, I went to 9X, and after I left 9X, I went to real estate school.
Mm-hmm.
I joined my dad's company.
Yep.
He got sick and went through the process of, you know, having cancer and passing on. And so I went to work for Sylvia Garcia. After that, she was our county commissioner. I was serving in the chief of staff capacity. And then I went into business for myself after she went to the state.
Yep.
And after that, I guess I went to the Urban League.
Wow, yeah. And so that move, I mean, you were in business, you were in government. Urban League was sort of your big first nonprofit job in a sense.
It was, indeed.
And how did that feel to you? I mean, how different did it feel?
It was a lot different.
Yeah.
It was a lot different. First of all, I was a CEO, so everything, you know, kind of started and ended with me. You know, it was, you know, 10 years ago, the economy was in the tank, and it was very difficult. We had a large staff where a lot of the contracts had gone away, and learning to realize that, you know, you can't expect government just to start back up, and when they do, there's a lag time. So that was a real learning experience of, you know, it's time to fish or cut bait, and it was time to cut bait. And so we went back through that process of you know, really restructuring the organization and really making sure that we ran it like a business.
Yeah.
You know, when the revenues were up and the opportunities were in, then you hire it up. It wasn't like a corporation where you might, you know, be able to sit on assets for a year or 6 months or year, 2, whatever the case may be. When you immediately see the trend occurring, you have to respond in a nonprofit business because your margins are so small. It's not like you're selling widgets, and you know, the more widgets you sell, the more you make. When I receive a dollar, that dollar is to hire someone to do a job. It's not necessarily to pay for a beautiful, you know, office and a nice place to sit and an extra desk. It is to pay that person only to do that job. So all the additional revenue that we have to raise is for all the things it takes for that person to have a place to work. All right. So learning that piece of the business was a real eye-opener.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily, it's a piece you have to learn, but it's not an easy piece to learn.
No, it's not.
Because it's so different, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
When you think about your work at the Urban League, what's the thing that you get most excited about? And what's the part of your job as the CEO that you maybe like the least?
Well, obviously the most exciting part is when a person comes in, they're unemployed, and then after a period of time, they're employed. Or they come in and they're trying to buy their first home, and they get that certificate that says that they're ready, and we've helped them to save for their down payment, and their credit is straight, and it might be 6 months, a year, or 2 longer. And all of a sudden, we get a picture in the mail of the house that they just bought, and a big thank you. Because, you know, you're stimulating the economy. You're helping to make families whole. You're helping people to realize that, you know, I didn't have to pay for the service that I got that has now put me on a path to a new life. And that's where, you know, the importance of telling the story really is you know, the most important thing I can do as a CEO. I was telling a friend of mine and a friend of yours, I was driving over here, I won't say names, but that in Chicago, our Urban League actually has a driver. I was sitting in traffic and I was complaining. I just took another wrong turn to get here. And I said how important it is to be able to see as many people as you possibly can to tell the story so that you can have the greatest amount of impact in your community. So to some, you might say, you have a driver. Well, that's ridiculous, right? But as I'm sitting in traffic turning the wrong way, right, I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't it be nice if I just had someone to drop me off here so I could talk to you and tell our story to the world. And so, you know, I get it. You know, it's important that you're able to really let people know the impact that you're having. You know, we touch about 10,000 people a year. Some of that is directing them to resources, but a lot of that is they came into the office with a need. And it could have been a kid who was, you know, 15 or 16 years old who was without our direction, headed to prison because he had just had that kind of life. But due to the fact that we're able to bring him or her into our programs and associate them with the kind of a caring adults and other young people that says, I know you've never been out of your community before, and I know that, you see gang violence everywhere you go, and that you've got a mom that's on drugs, but you too can still make it. Mm-hmm. And we're here to support you and help you do that. And some we can really help, some maybe not. Mm-hmm. But for those that we're able to really see, turn that corner and believe in themselves and listen to our advice, we try to tell people, life is a journey. And if you'll just do it the right way for a period of time, chances are you'll be on your way to a life that you never imagined possible.
The worst thing about your job?
I guess the kids that we don't save.
Just the misses.
It's the misses, right?
Yeah.
So, every year we'll hear of a kid that was killed. It'll be one of the kids that was in our program. Yeah. He or she did some period of time. They know, members of our staff. They were the kids we were trying to help, and they were in the wrong place, wrong time. Not that they were out doing something bad, but they were just in a bad element.
That's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is, because we know that, again, with more programming, more intensive support services, it's possible to save an even greater number of young people.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question. Back when I was in my 20s and I moved to Houston to work at Rice University, I moved from New York City, and I remember the president of Rice. I came to run an office at Rice that was a disaster at the time, and he said, it was George Rupp. I don't know if you remember George Rupp. And he said, this is a unique opportunity to come into a place that's broken and sort of fix it. And it was a unique opportunity. It worked. In a sense, you came into an organization with a rich history, but at the time, many saw as broken, right? There were things that had gone wrong, and you got to fix them. Was that a rewarding thing for you as a leader? I mean, I know there were a lot of hard things involved with that.
Yeah, there was a lot of hard things. But, I followed in the footsteps of a great leader. And certainly, you can't control the economy, and you can't control when people do bad things to have a reflection on you.
Yeah.
And to a degree, that's kind of what I ran into. But the funny thing was that in talking to other leaders who had taken on nonprofit jobs, we all seem to have the same story. It's like none of us realized we were getting ourselves into, or it seemed to blow up the minute that you got there.
Yeah.
So you kind of felt special for a while, but when you told the story, and everyone was like, "Yeah, me too," just a different version of the same story.
Yeah.
So I think if you're meant to be a leader that's going to survive, those are the tests that will get you ready for year 7, 8, 9, 10, so that you've been through a lot of these things. It's like our early discussion about the hurricane. We went through Hurricane Ike, and we saw what that devastation looked like, and we had lots of housing case managers that were helping people. When we went through Katrina, we were one of the main drop-off locations for people to come in and get processed. We worked with the Oprah Winfrey Foundation and built a kind of a recovery center for the people that they use to this day. But it was hard going to build that center. It was hard finding places for those people to live. It was difficult. A lot of things that we went through, we didn't have the right answers every day.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you learn. It makes you ready to take on the challenges that face you down the road.
Yeah. Are you a better leader today than you were 10 years ago?
No doubt.
Man.
No doubt.
Yeah.
It's
the ups and downs make a difference, don't they?
They do.
I mean, you don't like them at the time, but you like the ups, but not the downs.
Right. The smooth sailing is that's a myth. You have to earn that. No one just gets that job.
Yeah.
You have to go through the trial of fire, and then you appreciate it more. This latest hurricane really came at a bad time. We're approaching our 50th anniversary in 2018, so we had, plans on the table of things we want to do to move, gracefully towards our 50th year. Mm-hmm. Well, now the whole apple cart is upset, so we have to figure out how to respond so that we still hit our goals of our 50th, but we also take care of people in the fashion that they've come to expect from the Urban League. And is it just, a terrible event? Or how do you look for the silver linings in the cloud that exists right now? So, we're taking a real hard look at, what does this all mean, and how do we really find new opportunities out of the existing turmoil that exists?
Mm-hmm. When you look around Houston at the landscape of nonprofits, you see some nonprofits that should be doing a better job. You also see nonprofits that you think, man, those are good, those are performing. Who are some of the places? Where are some of the places that you think, yeah, they're doing a pretty good job?
Well, obviously, children at rest. What a loaded question that was.
Yeah, you don't.
No, just kidding. But certainly, I think you have to do something that people really care about. You have to make sure that you've got a space, I think, that has lots of room in it, so there's need for what you're doing. Or you at least have to make sure that if you're in that space and lots of people doing it, you are the clear leader.
Yeah.
Or at least one of the very top organizations in that space. So I think that, you know, the ones that would do that well, they kind of know who they are, and the ones that don't, you know, they'll learn because they won't be in business for very long. And so I tell funders, you know, there's a lot of glitz and glamour out there, but really look beneath the hood. One of the things that we always talk about is the fact that we've been around for a long time. You know, as you approach 50 years, that means that you got 50 years of clean audits. You've got, you know, loyal staff that's been with you, you know, many, many years. Staff has been with me in some cases 20 years. And they, you know, they do a certain thing that they do very well, and it's evidenced in our revenues and performance. We recently had the National Urban League come in, and they do a 3-year assessment. And they look at everything from your policies, your advocacy, your efficiency, just you know, your management, the whole bit. It's a 3-day process to go for a 3-year review, a detailed audit. And you're ranked anywhere from, you know, a 2.5 to a 5. You're less than 2.5, they pretty much will take away your affiliation. So I'm proud to say that we got a 5.0 this year, you know, and that takes a lot of hard work, a lot of attention to detail, but it also tells your funders, you know, that you're the kind of player that they want to be associated with. So, you know.
All right. So we have a bunch of Twitter questions here for you. They love you, Judson. So.
Wow. It's good to be loved.
Okay, here's a good question. So Reuben Jack Long wants to know, that's Jack Morgan, I guess is his name. What are some of the healthy habits you practice in order to maintain strong leadership?
Well, I think it's a lot of stuff that people do, that you see them doing. They're exercising. They're trying to eat right. I think getting rest is important. I think being able to compartmentalize a lot of the problems that you might have in your organization, your agency, is you've got to give yourself a break, realize you can't fix them all in a day, and shut it down. I think initially when I came to the Urban League, I was allowing the job to kind of control me versus me controlling it. I determined how this organization moves forward, when I wanted to move forward. And I think once I realized that was my responsibility, then it worked better for me. And that, you know, the body is a temple. You've got to, you're not going to be able to do it every day. I had somebody's fried chicken yesterday. But it was just, you know, due to the magnitude of the day.
Frank, I can never get enough fried chicken, I have to say. It's like a weakness of mine. Where's your favorite fried chicken in town, by the way?
Probably Frenchie's. I don't get it that often.
I know.
Yeah,
you can't get that too often.
But it is a favorite.
No, I know. Yeah. Monica Munoz has a question. When you did that transition, sort of bringing corporate management into the nonprofit world, what were some of the aspects that maybe were met with resistance by some of the nonprofit leaders and staff?
Staff was used to doing it a certain way. Measuring and metrics was new to many of them. Understanding that, you know, there was compassion for you to keep your job, but at the same time, we have to grow. The last few years, we really adopted the good to great concept, and it's one of the greatest books I've ever read. But it really...
That's the text in this class, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So, you know, I think that helping people understand that your funders are expecting you to run the business more like what they're experienced with. Our evaluators, our funders these days, they're people who are in this class. They carry their advanced doctorate degrees. They're not people that simply have an opinion about how something ought to be run. It is based upon true practiced theory that they read in a textbook and they spent money to master, right? So I get that, and I think it's helped us to be a better organization.
Leslie Azalia wants to know, we're in a diverse city. How, in regards to diversity, do you manage your organization any differently?
Well, we try to make sure that we provide services to all people and that equality and opportunity is important to everyone. So we do that by making sure that the programs are available in multiple locations throughout our community. So we try to be in neighborhoods where people need jobs, where people have children.
Has that mission changed? I mean, Urban League was sort of set up as sort of an African-American serving organization. Has that changed with the increasing Latino population?
I think we stress that it's set up for African-Americans and other minorities.
Yeah.
The other minorities is probably bolded and highlighted a little bit more than it used to be in the past. About 25% of the population that we serve is Hispanic. We welcome that and encourage that. We have a lot of bilingual staff. Our staff is small. We have less than 20 people, but in terms of full-time staff, probably 12-15% of that is bilingual, especially in the housing department. A lot of our people are looking to acquire homes and go through that first-time homebuyer class. And their work hours are really unusual, so we might have staff in the building at 5 or 6 in the morning or 8 p.m. at night.
Wow, very good. Okay, let's see. Wow.
Yeah. So you have to really adapt to the needs of a changing community. It's really interesting.
Luis Morales wants to know, how do you decide who to delegate to in regards to the work that happens at the Urban League? I mean, how much delegation is important, and how much do you delegate to leaders to delegate to others?
Well, I look at delegation as really empowering people because you're giving them a task. You're not telling them how to do it, but instead you're saying, figure out how to get this accomplished. And I think that really helps them to grow as leaders within the organization. I really even though the members of the organization have titles, whenever I address them in emails, it's team. What should we do about this? Or give me your thoughts and feedback on that. I really try to, again, make people understand that, and it's not a ploy, it's not a game. It is truly seeking their input to help make the best possible decision that we can all buy into.
Michelle Clinton wants to know, what do you spend the greatest portion of your time on?
The greatest portion of my time is spent thinking. It is really thinking about what's coming next, right? How do I make sure that, when you've got 20 employees, and depending on like the hurricane now, we'll probably grow to 60 or 70 employees because of the types of contracts that come in, of the work that we do on a normal, regular basis. It's now going to be accelerated. So I'll now have to expand my ranks of service providers. So thinking about, what does that process look like to make sure that we're ready? Making sure I've got available space, making sure I've got available partners. I have a project that's come in that I'm somewhat unfamiliar with how to do. So I have to think about who are the people I need to surround myself with, since this particular partner wants to work with the Urban League, and it's a really great project. So I've got to figure out how to make them right, that I was the right choice.
Tell me about your board, Judson. How big is your board, and how engaged are you with the board?
The board is mostly corporate members. Okay, so these are corporations that try to associate themselves with companies like mine. That really try to make sure that we're empowering underserved communities. So you'll have the Macy's, the Wells Fargo, the UPS, the Home Depots, all kinds of different folks who are really in the family support.
And how many on your board?
About 30 people.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a fairly large board. They are vice president level. They are people that in many cases serve as that person that represents the company on other nonprofit type companies like ours. Oftentimes, we'll have an individual from the community that can just kind of keep it real about what's needed for regular people, right? And so you'll have that voice in the room as well. And then we try to make sure that it's a board that is very engaging and interactive. I don't want people who are all just saying, oh, you guys are doing a great job. They listen to the stats, they hear but I want folks who also kind of question and push us to grow. But I want people who will also not just question and push us to grow, but when I say that's a great idea, can you help me get there? I need X. And I'd like to see them, rise to the occasion and help us get there, either through manpower, volunteers, or the financial resources necessary to do the job.
Janae Smothers wants to know, what is the ideal next step for the Houston Area Urban League? As you envision it out, what is that next step for you guys?
Well, I think that people are becoming more and more expectant that you're going to bring it to them, right? So if that means
personalized,
you gotta bring it. Here are my needs. Okay, so tell me how you're going to address my needs, and then secondly, make it easy for me to access. Do you have a mobile bus that you can drive to U of H downtown, and I can leave my class and then go talk to someone about buying my first home or starting my small business, or I need assistance with signing up for the Affordable Care Act. Make it where I don't have to go seek it. So we're going to try to use technology more broadly. We're going to maybe use the plan that's been laid out for us to get the mobile buses to go into neighborhoods that need the services. And then we're going to try to strengthen our partnerships. So, if we have locations throughout the country, throughout the city, without having to have our own brick and mortar locations, but instead partnering with other similar agencies or even corporations who might not be a nonprofit, but maybe, UPS wants a housing counselor on site because they've looked at their demographics. A percentage of their workforce is ages 26 to 35, the sweet spot for buying a home, and we want to make it easy for our folks to walk into a class after work. Things like that.
Yeah. Do you personally have sort of ambitions that are political? I mean, you have a family that has that. Do you ever think about being a county commissioner yourself, or?
I've kind of been there, done that.
Yeah.
But you just never know.
Yeah. Never say never, right?
You just never say. And, because you realize that you have the capacity to go and do good work somewhere.
Yeah.
And if, in fact, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to really take an active role in the direction of our city, our state, our country, right? And so if, in fact, you really disagree, or you think that you can lend some expertise to an area that is obviously lacking based upon your current representation, that you ought to keep that as an option.
R.B. Carter wants to know, how do you let it be known that you're open to ideas from your staff?
We have a weekly operations meeting. Sometimes I go, sometimes I don't. I don't go because I don't want them to always feel like I'll be there and they can have open and frank discussions. When I do go, I try to remind them that we're there to have open and frank discussions. And I love hearing all the great stuff that they're doing and how wonderful they are. But if there's a problem I can help you address, or if there's something going on that we can talk about as a family unit, as a company, then let's do that. And that, no one's going to get slapped on the hand or made fun of or made to feel bad because you have something you can't quite figure out. As we go from good to great, as we focus on our, CQ, our continuous quality improvement, these are opportunities to learn. So, it's really kind of their meeting, and I kind of listen in, and when I hear something I can add something to, I add something to. But that seems to work. We enjoy talking to each other.
What's your big strength as a leader, do you think, Judson?
Oh, I think it's clearly the willingness to listen to others.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really try to make sure that we're all on the same page, and I'm not anticipating a fight because I've talked about it with you. And even when we've both made our case and we disagree, then I let them know. I really appreciate their input. Although it has not swayed my decision, it has helped me be more thorough and understand the decision I'm about to make.
That's a good line. I need to use that sometime.
I just made that up. But it's true.
No, I get it, yeah. All right, as we finish up the interview, your favorite restaurant in town?
I went to school with Johnny Carrabba.
Oh, did you really? So you like Carrabba's? Is there a favorite Carrabba's? Do you like the one on Kirby?
Well, I think the one he owns is one of them. I think he sold the rest of them.
Yeah.
If you haven't tried
there's a difference, isn't there, when you go to the...
You said that, I didn't. No, I'm not jeopardizing my friend's brand. No, he's great. His food is great. His family's very involved. You go to the one on Carrabba's, you'll see his mom and dad walking around in there. You'll see the same faces of some of the waiters have been there for, 20 years. And that's, I've talked to Johnny often about interviewing him, bringing him to a staff meeting, just let him talk about his concept as a leader, and to talk to maybe one of the wait staff. What would make you want to be a waiter for 20 years? I'm not putting waiters down, but most people would say, I'm going to start as a waiter.
Yeah.
And I'm going to end up as an owner. But what gives you the kind of joy that would justify you doing what you want to do for 20 years in a job that many people would say, that's probably not a job that a person does for 20 years, right? So he's an interesting guy that's led an interesting life, and that may have something to do with how much I appreciate his calamari. I don't know.
I appreciate calamari, that's for sure. Is there a place in Houston, sort of a venue, a park, or someplace that sort of is a secret that you want to share? That's one of your favorite little secret venues?
Yeah, but if I tell you, then
I know.
I don't know. I think there are lots of great places in Houston. When we had the Super Bowl, and I was able to go up to the new Partnership Tower and to just look down Avenue de las Americas. I hadn't seen that before. And I had a staff meeting there a couple of times, and I had Mark Morial, our national president, came to town, and we hosted him there. And it just gives you a sense of pride in your city. It's a beautiful sight to see the improvements that we've made there with Discovery Green. And I was on city council many years ago, and one of the things that Bob Urey, whom you know, and I worked at Central Houston, we developed the Business and Tourism Committee. And the thought was, so I was elected in 1991. So the thought was in the 90s, it wasn't a very inviting place downtown. So what could we do to stimulate, people coming and experiencing it? And so we did the Hilton Americas Hotel. We got, we sold bonds to do that deal. We expanded the park. We did, and I say we just threw the ideas out. The funders and others had to make all that happen. But it was nice to be a city leader at a time when we were able to envision a different city of Houston. And we went in and we did all of the redevelopment around, Smith and in between Elgin and, I guess all the way up to wherever the Specs Liquor is, that area downtown.
Midtown there.
The Midtown area. All that was through creative ideas about how do we redevelop an area that's depressed, and how can we use whatever leverage we have from government assistance and the private development community and the whole bit. So, I've always...
It's interesting to see the big difference. I mean, for so many of our staff at Children's Risk, they
just live there. They don't know how it came to be, but
the big, huge transitions in Houston, right? It's sort of amazing. And now the east side of downtown as well. It's amazing.
So that's the one thing I'd say about politics. You say, well, why would you get involved? When I ran, it was because I had some ideas about how Houston could be different. And so I got a chance to go in there and be a part of the difference. And now here we are, 91, 2001, 25, 26 years later, and look what it is.
Exactly.
So it is a sense of pride. So when I was standing there that day and I was looking down that avenue, I was like, this is a cool place.
I don't want to be two old guys, though, talking about the good old days, you know.
Just today.
Work-life balance. You mentioned it a little bit. So many leaders, they laugh when I say work-life balance. Do you feel like you have work-life balance?
You have to work at it.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
You do have to work at it, yeah.
And you're thinking about work all the time, no matter what, aren't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough. So, like I said, you have to compartmentalize. I was talking to a council member just yesterday, and she was telling me about all these things she has to do and how she doesn't feel relaxed until she's gotten a majority of the stuff off her plate every day. And I said, I get it. You know, I was there too, and I still feel that way at times, but I have to remember that only I am holding myself responsible for all that stuff every day, right?
Yeah.
So let it go. Try to learn how to relax. Enjoy your family. Go on vacation every now and then. Because really the only time that you get away is when you actually are away.
Yeah.
And
are you checking your phone all the time when you're away? You're checking your email?
Much.
No, you're good.
Not so much, yeah. Not as bad.
I find it hard to get away.
Yeah. You really, because if you, don't do it, Bob.
I know. You know, I was on vacation in Italy, and I knew that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon is when 8 o'clock in Houston, when I would start getting, and what was really sad is I was really anxious for 2 o'clock to, like, I wanted to see what was going on.
Yeah.
So,
the world would be okay without us. Unfortunately,
I know,
believe it or not, it will still continue to spin.
Yeah. So, Judson Robinson, Urban League, you do a great job. Thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for being here with this class today.
Great to be with y'all.
Nice to see you, man.
Enjoyed it.
And we'll see you guys next time here at the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. Until then, keep up the great work.